First round of the 2025 NFL Draft is officially in the books. There were plenty of surprises. There were some really fun picks. There were some not so fun picks, depending on which side of the fence you're on. But the draft coverage is only going to ramp up here. I figured I would give you guys a second round mock draft, some names to look out for tomorrow. There were a lot of surprising falls and risers. And basically the theme of the draft was that some of the biggest injury guys and potential character concerns guys fell out of the first round. Will Johnson, potentially a big injury designation. Mike Green and Luther Burden, potentially with some character or off-field things in the case of Mike Green. Again, you can look into that. And really, Shedeur Sanders was not drafted inside the first round. He falls out and is available for any number of teams to consider here in round 2 or 3, depending on how far that fall ends up being. Hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already for a lot more videos here over the next couple of days. You're going to be shocked at the output based on what I've done so far in the past few months. I've got time. I'm ready to go. It's draft season. We're locked in. Browns on the clock at number 33. They do have quite a few options here. It would not be entirely surprising to see them grab a running back. The Browns, of course, made the biggest shock, I would say, of round 1 when they traded out of number 2. What I would say is basically out of blue chip range. They passed on Ashton Genty. They decided to upgrade their interior defensive line after losing a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson. And they took Mason Graham, who's maybe just their best player available at a position of need. Decided to pass on Genty, maybe didn't value running back at 5. But they passed up on Travis Hunter. I think they might opt to go with his teammate at 33. I think that Shedeur Sanders is absolutely in play, but I also feel like Mike Green is in play. It wouldn't also entirely shock me to see them take a corner. It's just tough because where do you project these guys that are clearly falling in the draft for non-football reasons? Or, I mean, I guess with Will Johnson, like an injury counts. It's not tape related necessarily, even though there are some real athleticism questions potentially, but I think he's a really good player. I'm shocked to see him available at this point, even with the injury stuff. I think Mike Green's really good. I am a little bit surprised to see him getting into round 2, but I had him going at 29 to the Commanders. So where do you go here if you are the Browns? I think that, okay, maybe you don't love Shedeur Sanders at 2 enough to take him, or 5 even, but I think they could consider him at 33. I think it's very much in play. Just will they opt to do that? I also think tackle is absolutely a position of need for them. I just look at the available tackles and I'm not seeing it. Like, who is actually going to go here? Feels really early for Charles Grant. Savai'i is probably going to be guard. Same for Marcus Bowe. Feels early for Ariante Ursary. I'd be surprised to see them go anything at tackle. So I think you're probably going to look to running back or quarterback in the case of Shedeur Sanders. I'm going to go Travion Henderson. I'm going to keep him in state. I think that's a fun storyline. This is a guy who's a great pass-protecting running back that can really catch the football out of the backfield, can really make some big explosive plays happen. You get to keep him in state. You have multiple second-round picks here. But what the selection of Travion Henderson says to me at 33 in this mock is that you're probably just going to avoid Shedeur Sanders altogether. So even at 36, I don't think you're taking him there either. I think the Browns are probably prepared for the possibility that they're going to find their quarterback a different way. And then Kenny Pickett, Kirk Cousins potentially even coming in, or I guess any number of different guys could be the guy over the next few years. But I feel like if you're not taking Sanders at 2 or at 5 or even moving down again, are you doing it at 33? It's definitely a strong possibility, but I'm going to play around with the potential of them going a different direction. Texans at 34, traded completely out of the first round with the Giants who moved up. They need wide receiver. They need offensive tackle potentially. They need maybe interior defensive line. But with the available receivers, I think it'd be tough to pass on them. There are a bunch of really good ones available. I love the idea of Luther Burden. I think he's a first-round talent. He gets into the second round because of some apparent diva wide receiver type concerns. But hey, I want my receiver like that. Those are the guys that can play. But I don't know. Burden, I think, is a stud. So good at the football in his hands. I think he would absolutely eat in the slot on this team. No Emeka Ibuka, but they get Luther Burden at 34. Texans, of course, trying to fix receiver, but the Titans are back on the clock at 35 after taking Cam Ward at number 1 overall. You could continue to build around him. I think receiver is still absolutely in play, but Mike Green is available. I think the Titans were highly considering Abdul Carter until they ended up pivoting towards QB, but you still need to improve this pass rush in a huge way, and Mike Green's available at 35. I feel like it's a really good pickup for them. He's a really, really talented player, again, with some off-the-field stuff that you can look into. Not sure how that's going to impact the projection here. He falls out of the first round, but the Titans stop the slide at 35. At 36, the Browns back on the clock again. I am not going to be addressing quarterback here because I feel like if you were going to take Sanders, you probably would have done it at 33. Or you might have considered a move back into the first round to take him to get that fifth-year option. It's not the end-all, be-all. Again, the Browns could absolutely take Shedeur Sanders. I'm just not sure that's going to end up being the case. I really don't know. And obviously, we'll end up seeing what happens. But again, you upgraded the interior defensive line. You're trying to make Myles Garrett's life easier. You bring in Travion Henderson for a spark on offense. I still really feel like they need to upgrade offensive tackle. They really, really do. I, again, just don't know that a player is there that makes sense for Jacksonville at 36, or for Cleveland at 36 via Jacksonville. What tackle are you confidently taking here? I don't know that the guy exists. There was such a run on offensive tackle inside the first round with Josh Simmons, Josh Connerly, Donovan Jackson potentially in that conversation as well as a tackle, even though he's going to end up playing guard, of course, in Minnesota. Gray Zabel going to end up playing guard in Seattle. But I feel like the tackles that you might have been excited about at 33 or 36 are not here. Connerly didn't fall that far. Simmons didn't fall. It's a real struggle to think about where the Browns would go here if they were to take a tackle. I just don't know that the player is there for them. And it's not to say they can't grab one. I don't necessarily agree with the PFF rankings on some of these tackles. It wouldn't be a surprise to see some of these guys go a little bit earlier, but I'm just not blown away with the options. And I feel like edge is still such a need, and there are so many good edge rushers available. At this pick, you can improve that position. And for the type of player that they might covet in that 4-3 defense, I think Scorton would be a pretty good fit. You might consider a Landon Jackson. But I also think Donovan Ezaraku is just the best player here. And I think they could opt to go with kind of, I'll say, a smaller edge. You know, he's only about 250-ish pounds, 6'2", but he's got super long arms. I think that's going to play up. I think you need to improve that pass rush. And they're trying to revamp this defensive line here with Mason Graham and now Donovan Ezaraku. Raiders at 37. Again, this is a team that could absolutely consider a quarterback, but I don't think they will. They bring in Geno Smith. You could prepare for the future with Shedeur Sanders, but I'm going to go Will Johnson. I feel like Pete Carroll, defensive-minded guy, defensive back, has really appreciated good play. They lose Nate Hobbs in free agency. Will Johnson, if he went at number 6 in the draft, I know they got Ashton Genty, right? But if Will Johnson was the 6th player selected, would we really be like, wow, that was a bad pick? I don't think so, because at his peak, this is a really, really good player. If you can get beyond the injury stuff, which who knows which team's going to take that chance, I feel like Will Johnson could end up being a huge draft steal here at 37. Patriots at 38, really in a strong position because they got Will Campbell at number 4. That's a big help to the offensive line. And we know they're probably going to try and target a bigger-bodied wide receiver. I think a guy like Jaden Higgins makes sense. I'm not exactly super high on him as a player. I'd like to see him actually use his hands a little bit more and catch the ball outside of his frame and not let the ball travel into his chest. I feel like he's body catching a lot, but he's got the size. reportedly, this is what the Patriots are looking for. And I feel like if you're feeling strong about Jaden Higgins as a prospect, and there are a couple of good Iowa State receivers in this class, I might actually prefer Knoll to Higgins. But if you want a big-bodied receiver to pair with Drake May, Higgins is an option here at 38. Bears on the clock at 39. Made a fun pick at number 10, taking Colston Loveland, the tight end. And I think this is a good fit because he can work up the seam. He can play in 12 personnel with Cole Kmet and be a very different style of tight end to Kmet. He's going to work in the slot. You got Moore on the outside. You have Adunze on the outside. I really like the pickup into this offense. And you know that Ben Johnson's going to know how to utilize them. You know he's going to. And we've seen 12 personnel work really well in Detroit. But I think what the Bears really value as well is a good running game, right? With Ben Johnson coming in there. And I think a guy like Caleb Johnson is just an absolute stud. I think he's got a lot of boxes checked off here. He's very patient. He's big as a runner. He can catch the football out of the backfield. And he can move a little bit. He's quicker than fast. But I think this is a guy who's got RB1 potential here. And for this Bears team, you get a bell cow running back at 39. I'm a big Caleb Johnson fan. I think the Bears get a good one. Saints at 40. You wonder about when these quarterbacks are going to get off the board, right? That's the tough thing because the Saints are reportedly high on Tyler Shuck, high on Jackson Dart, not high on Shedeur Sanders, but Shedeur is available at 40. I still don't know that they're going to go that direction. And Sanders could be the first pick of round 2. But here, he's going to continue to fall. The Saints upgraded their offensive line long-term with the addition of Longhorn legend Kelvin Banks. Gotta love it. But they really have needs still all over the field. And I think that defensive line needs a lot of work, but they're in luck because there are some really good players available. You could bring in another Texas Longhorn in Alfred Collins. I like that fit a lot. But you got to think about it. This is a new 3-4 attacking style defense. You do need that nose tackle. Alfred Collins checks a box there. I'm going to talk myself into it. Back-to-back Longhorns here for the Saints. Drafted Kenny Vaccaro before. Horns up again. I think it's a fun fit. And you look at the type of defensive tackle the Saints might be looking for here. I think a nose is in order. And that's very much not Omar Norman Lott. It's not Darius Alexander. It's not TJ Sanders. I think it's early for CJ West. It's early for Jordan Phillips, right? Josh Farmer maybe starting to get into the conversation, but Alfred Collins, former highly regarded recruit, coming off a career best year. He's bulked up, and he's going to be a real inside player. And I think someone that can offer a ton of pass rush from the 0 or 1 technique and be quite a good player there for the Saints. At 41, Bears back on the clock. Well, we've gone Caleb Johnson. I still feel like they could upgrade the edge. And I think that was in heavy consideration probably at 10, but the right player just was not available. And you've got some pretty good options here at 41. I would say that based on, I know you bring in Dayo Odengbo, you have Montez Sweat there. Could you consider adding, a smaller, faster pass rush option? That's a possibility. I think Princely Uman-Mielen kind of fits in that mold. We know we want to improve the pass rush if we're the Chicago Bears. Is it early for Princely? I think Oladejo is a very interesting option as well. Edge, I think, is very much in consideration. That's not to say that they would completely avoid interior defensive line as well. There are some really good players here. And maybe with Odengbo, you're happy with the way Edge is shaped up. I think that's a possibility as well. Just went running back. You know what? Let's go Darius Alexander. I think there was a chance this guy could have gone into the first round, and it wouldn't have been entirely surprising. He is an older prospect. But the Bears are kind of entering a win now type of period. I know Caleb Williams only going in a year 2, but you've got some real talent there that's starting to accumulate. You've got your offense set at this point, right? You bring in Caleb Johnson in this mock draft. Caleb Williams is your quarterback of the future. Caleb and Caleb. Different first letter, but still. You have your 2 outside receivers. We're going to call Colston Loveland a slot. and you have some rotational guys in there as well. You have Cole Kmet as your true main inline tight end. Your offensive line is put together at this point. And again, there's not really a tackle worth taking here for Chicago. We're sticking with Braxton Jones. So the offense is kind of put together. That defense still needs to be able to perform. How about a really good pass rusher from the interior at 41? Jets at 42. I'm going to bring Shedeur Sanders to the Big Apple one way or another. I know you bring in Justin Fields. It's a 2-year contract. You're not tied to him long term. I think Shedeur is worth the selection here at 42. I think he's a second-round type of player. I like him. I don't love him. I have a second-round grade on him. I think that's good. He's a good player. I could see him being, a top half of the league type quarterback that you can win with. And I think that's worth taking at 42. He's a different type of player to Justin Fields, right? Very different type of player. Fields is the big-time athlete, running quarterback, not really very accurate, really doesn't get the ball out on time. Sanders is highly accurate, also doesn't really get the ball out on time, but that could be a function of the offensive line. Goes here to New York with the Jets, or I guess New Jersey, Florham Park, I think is where they're located, but of course playing in East Rutherford at MetLife Stadium. You've got your tackles set up for the future. You're bringing Armand Membu. You have Olu Fashanu from a year ago, Elijah Vera Tucker, Joe Tippmann. This is an offensive line that is put together. And for a pocket passer, if the Fields experiment is not working, Sanders is a chance, I think, to play in year one. Crazy to have a $20 million per year backup quarterback, but I think Sanders is worth a shot here at 42. You've got the protection in place. I know you need more playmakers. I totally get that. And this could very easily be like Mason Taylor, like for sure. But I think I like Shedeur landing with the Jets. 49ers at 43. He should be picking at 49, right? I've got a lot of options here because I just feel like this team they are shockingly far away because they've got a ton of star power, but I feel like they have a ton of holes. And they upgraded one of them at number 11 with Mykel Williams, getting a bigger-bodied edge rusher in the mix. But that interior D-line is so poor, and I think you need something else in the mix. There are still some good interior defensive linemen available, and this is the strength of the draft class. It just depends what type of player you want. And I think for a real attacking defense here, a guy like Omar Norman-Lott does make a lot of sense. He's a smaller interior defensive lineman. He's not like a 3-down player. So I feel like as a pass rush first interior D lineman, this is someone that is very much not a nose tackle, but can really, really, really get after the QB. And I think that's a fun fit in San Francisco. So I'm going Omar Norman-Lott to the Niners at 43. At 44, Cowboys back on the clock. Kind of shocked by taking Tyler Booker as high as they did at number 12, but high character guy, building up the offensive line. I actually don't really hate it. But the Cowboys still have a number of needs on offense. I don't know that this needs to be a running back here, but I think you're looking at wide receiver and seeing a bunch of really good options. And I think they probably would be looking for someone to play the outside. Keeping Jack Besh in state, I think makes a lot of sense. CeeDee Lamb has been a monster in the slot over the past couple years, so bring in a bigger-bodied, outside-type receiver. I feel like he's a good fit to this offense. We're really building around Dak Prescott if we're the Cowboys in this scenario. And yes, they have needs on the defensive line. Absolutely. But I think continue to build around Dak and let this offense go to work. Indianapolis Colts at 45. Took Tyler Warren at 14. It was always Tyler Warren. I don't know how I got off of that. It was always Tyler Warren. You still have needs really all over your defense. You lose Odengbo. Obviously, a need at linebacker. Safety still has never really been solved. You bring in Charvarius Ward at corner. I think that's a great pickup. And I think you could absolutely look to consider a defensive player here. And the fact that uber athlete Nicky Manwari is still available at 45 very much reminds me of the Brian Branch fall. It's a very different style of player, but at a less valuable position. A lot of these teams ahead of them could have considered Manwari, decided to go in different directions. Manwari, I think, is a perfect fit for Chris Ballard, who loves drafting the insane athletes with a high RAS relative athletic score. Manwari fits in, can play in the box, can play strong safety from too high. I think he's a really, really good player. Ball hawk, really good fit in Indianapolis. They finally get the super athlete they've been craving after taking Tyler Warren at 14. Rams on the clock after a big trade down where they got an extra pick. Are you kidding me? Usually the Rams are not about the picks. They got a first-round pick next year from Atlanta, which may end up being a top 15 pick. Very comfortably, that could happen. They moved down to 46. It's a long way to go, but I think it's very worth making that move considering what this draft class looks like. And Trey Amos is really tempting because you absolutely could have taken him at 28. Absolutely could. I think Mason Taylor is going to be tough for the Rams to pass up at 46. He's a guy that kind of does everything really well. He's a really, really solid player. Can block, fluid mover, can catch the football, good route runner for his size at the position. I think it's going to be tough for Sean McVay to turn down the big-bodied tight end Mason Taylor. Arizona Cardinals at 47. In the first round, you took Walter Nolan, which was a little bit of a surprise because he's not what you'd classically think of as a Monty Osenfort guy, because there were some character and immaturity questions about Walter Nolan, but I guess passed with flying colors on his top 30 visits to Arizona. Osenfort felt really good about bringing him in and drafted him at number 16. Offensive line, still a bit of a mess. I think Amos does make some sense, but I think this is where you could see an offensive lineman get off the board because they still could use a tackle. They could still use guard. I think they could still absolutely consider center. And I'm going to go with Jared Wilson here. I like the idea of Jonas Ava-Inaya staying in state, but Wilson can really, really move, and I think it's a fun fit. I think he's big enough to play guard, and I think this is someone with 3 position flexibility, but he's probably a center. I look at the Cardinals. I think they do potentially have a need at that position, but also you could consider him at guard as well. So it's just an overall upgrade to the interior offensive line for a guy that is a really, really good athlete at the position and something that you can develop as we get to the Dolphins at 48. I know they have a number of needs on the O-line. Went with the interior defensive lineman Kenneth Grant at 13. Corner is just such a big need when I look at this team. I know O-line, but Trey Amos is here. Savon Revel if you're not worried about, or Savon Revel if you're not worried about the injury. But I'm going with Trey Amos from Ole Miss. Amos, really, really talented player. Definitely checked off the speed box with his 40 time at the combine. And you worried about that maybe from film study, but the tape's really good overall. It's just, does he have the deep speed? Does he have the long speed? And it seems like he does, right? So he ends up being a top 50 selection. Could have been a first-round guy. Dolphins might be losing Jalen Ramsey. I think Trey Amos absolutely makes sense. As we get to the Bengals at 49, it's an easy pickup for me. I'm going Xavier Watts. He played under new Bengals DC Al Golden at Notre Dame. He is arguably the best safety on the board. Reunites with Al Golden for a team that could use an upgraded safety. I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer there, as the Seahawks have finally upgraded the interior O-line. They've finally done it. I didn't think John Schneider would take a guard. I really didn't. They grabbed Gray Zabel. I'm sure the positional flexibility didn't hurt. And now they have some flexibility to potentially go a different direction. Could it be off the edge? Could it be a safety? They've got some flexibility here. Could also look to see them add a receiver. And I think a big-bodied outside receiver is not the worst idea. I love Kyle Williams. To me, he's probably about the best receiver available. And keeping him in state is a fun storyline, so I'm just going to do that. I really like Kyle Williams. He's got a ton of juice. He is a playmaker. And I think worth a top 50 selection. Seahawks keep him in state. They've got another pick coming up right after the Broncos at 51, who I think if you're looking to take a receiver or running back, you're in a great position to do so. And I think with Sean Payton, he's probably looking for a running back that can catch the football. I'm so tempted to go Jaden Blue here, even though I feel it's early. Which of these guys can really do that? Not a great number of receiving back options that I feel great about at 51. I like DJ Giddens. I like RJ Harvey. I like Dylan Sampson. To me, Scatterboo and Judkins, even Damian Martinez, these are not great receiving back options. And I feel like that's kind of a necessity if you're going to be a Sean Payton running back. So maybe they opt to just go grab a receiver. And Trey Harris, big-bodied receiver to add to the offense. I think that's in consideration. To me, Jalen Noel feels more like a Sean Payton type of receiver, somebody that can dominate in the slot and I think play the Z. He's a little bit smaller, but he is so fast, so explosive, and I think it would be really fun in this Denver Broncos offense. Seahawks back on the clock via Pittsburgh, and we had them go Kyle Williams a couple of picks ago. Of course, in round one, they finally upgraded the interior O-line and really could again. They really could just opt to double dip there. And I like the idea of Jonas Sava-Inaya. He's probably going to end up being a guard, but he's got tackle flexibility. He tested fairly well. And I think, again, that positional flexibility probably ups his value to a guy like John Schneider. He's got a chance to start at guard, play tackle if there's an inevitable injury to Abe Lucas. I like Sava-Inaya a lot. Bucks at 53. The Bucks had a very interesting first round. Went Emeka Egbuka at 19, getting ahead of Mike Evans and potentially Chris Godwin, who has had some injury concerns. Get a reliable slot receiver. I was kind of surprised with that. I like Jalen McMillan, but you're getting ahead of a Mike Evans retirement. I don't hate it, but you still need to improve that defense in a big way. We know they value production overall, and they've got some really good cornerback options. They really do. I think Princely Uman Mielen is interesting. I really like his potential. I like Jared Ivey too. I think it's early for a lot of these edge rushers, though. I don't think Jordan Birch is a tremendous fit. I'm going to get a corner off the board. He's one of my favorite players in the draft, Savone Revel. He would go a lot higher than this if not for injury. He tore his ACL early in the season, but he's one of the best cover corners in this draft. He's got elite size, a little bit of an older prospect, but elite size, elite athleticism. If he can cross off the injury boxes, he's going to be a stud corner. And I love the addition to this Bucs defense. And I think you're kind of jumping the Packers there, who have finally taken a receiver in round one. Longhorn legend Matthew Golden. Corner still a huge need, and there are some really good corners still available. I think Benjamin Morrison is going to end up being the pick for me because I think he's a really good fit in this defensive scheme. Again, it's injury concerns with him, but he's a great player, especially if you look back to 2023. This guy was an absolute stud. We know the Packers love to run a man-heavy, press-heavy defensive scheme, and Morrison, I think, fits the mold of what they're going to be looking for at the position. He's a great player when he's fully healthy, and he can start on the boundary for the Packers at 54. At 55, Chargers back on the clock. In round one, they couldn't resist the power run. Went with Amarion Hampton at 22. They still need playmakers on offense in a huge way, but they still also need to improve the defensive line. I'm looking for any Michigan players. We got a lot of them off the board at this point. It's early for Josiah Stewart. So where do you go here if you were the Chargers? You need weapons on offense in a huge way. Tight end's a big position of need. I don't think Elijah Arroyo fits what the Chargers want to do offensively. He's not a good enough blocker. I think maybe they'd target like a Gunnar Helm way down the board. He feels like a Charger type of player. So we're looking probably for a receiver. And I think Trey Harris is a good fit. Alec Iomanner is a really willing blocker with good size as well. Jalen Royals is definitely a solid option after the catch, as is Savion Williams. I mean, there are some real options here, but you need guys that can impact the game as a receiver. And I might just go Iomanner because of his ability as a blocker with his size. I think that's going to be really highly valued by Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. I'm going to go Iomanner at 55. Bills at 56. Of course, in round one, they went with Maxwell Hairston, the speedy corner out of Kentucky. Still have needs all over the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. And this might be where you see an interior defensive lineman go off the board. I mean, I like the talent available. And I do probably agree that TJ Sanders is about the best interior defensive lineman available. I definitely wouldn't mind that. I think safety would be in consideration as well. I like the idea of adding Kevin Winston. Makuba, I think, is really going to end up being more of a nickel, but just didn't play that much at Texas because of Jahdae Barron. I mean, I guess Barron was mostly on the boundary, but Makuba kind of moved around for, I guess, a number of reasons. Bills at 56. I'm thinking interior defensive line. It's just, do you want a nose like CJ West, or do you want someone with a little bit more pass rush upside like TJ Sanders? And I mean, Shamar Turner's a good player too. I like Pegues. I like Peebles a lot. You really do have some good options here still at defensive tackle. I think I'm just going to almost turn in the card. I like Josh Farmer here as well. I don't think that's terrible. I think the value at edge is just a little bit stronger right now. There are just some really good edge rushers still on the board to me. I'm gonna go Princely Uman Mielen. I think he's got a lot of juice as a pass rusher. 6'4", 255. I think he's got real upside in this class. And I really do like the edge rushers available. I feel like I really was tempted to go interior defensive line, but I don't think you can rely on Joey Bosa to stay healthy. I know they picked him up, but Uman Mielen is another, guy in that room to get after the QB. You can really never have enough of those guys. Panthers at 57. I think also need more of those guys. You need to impact the QB. Their defense was so bad. There are some really good edge players still available. And for their defense, I kind of think Olu Oladejo is a solid pickup for them here. I think he's a good fit for the scheme, 6'3", 250. And he's got some real athleticism and real upside as a pass rusher. And for this defensive scheme, I feel like he's one of the better players available for Carolina that passed on Jalen Walker at number 8. Went with the offensive player in Tet McMillan, the Tet offensive. But they get a 3-4 outside linebacker here in Oladejo. Texans back up at 58. Of course, we saw them just pick, not in real life, but here in this mock draft, with Luther Burden. I think tackle and guard is still something you could consider. I'm not sold on Titus Howard being a long-term starter for them. We don't know about Blake Fisher yet, really. So I think you could opt to get some more, guys in the room. And there's some good talent available. I'm a big fan of Marcus Bowe. I think Milam's a decent option. Could go with a high upside Charles Grant. I don't know exactly when he's going to go, but he's got a ton of upside. He's got elite size and pretty good athleticism. Is it early for him? Yeah, it might be. But the way I'm thinking he wouldn't have to play right away. I like Marcus Bowe, too. I think you've got to do something on the offensive line here. And I think Bowe's going to play guard. I'm going to go Marcus Bowe. He's a little bit lighter, a little bit short arms, but he can really move. And again, I think his home in the NFL is not at right tackle. It's probably at guard. And that's what the Texans will be drafting him to play here at 58. Ravens back on the clock at 59 after taking Malachi Starks in round 1. I think they could consider an upgrade on the O-line, but they usually just do a great job of sticking and picking and taking the best player available that falls to them. And you've got a number of good options here. I'm going to end up going Nick Scorton. He is, I would call him a bigger bodied edge rusher, but I think showed up at the combine at 257, probably listed a lot heavier here at 285. And he led the Big Ten in sacks 2 years ago at Purdue. Transfers to A&M. It just wasn't really a defensive scheme conducive to pressuring the QB. I think Scorton's best football is ahead of him. I think the Ravens could afford to add some more talent into their edge room and their D-line room and really just improve the overall pass rush. I don't know that you're stoked on what you've seen from Odafe Owe. David Ajabo's been disappointing. Kyle Van Noy's getting older. Tavius Robinson is upgradable. Nick Scorton's another guy into the room. I don't know what his playing weight's going to be, but I know he's got more juice than what he showed at A&M this past season, playing a little bit overweight. And I think the Ravens could get a real value pick here at 59. Lions at 60. They went with interior defensive line help in the form of Tyleik Williams. And we know guard is something that they've done apparently a lot of homework on this season. But I don't really love the value that's available. And I know they need help off the edge. I know they prefer bigger bodied edge rushers typically. And we've got some good ones available. And one of my favorites that's available is Jordan Birch. He's a really, really good athlete. He's got really good potential. I think he's closer to 275, 280 than 295. But with the build that he has, the long arms, the overall size, I think he's a player that I could have seen sneaking into the back end of the first round, to be honest. I think there was a chance that would happen. He falls here to 60. Could fall farther than this, but he's got really good potential. And I think for Detroit, who's looking to improve their pass rush, I think Jordan Birch is going to fit the mold here. At 61, we have the Commanders. They also need help off the edge. In round one, they went with tackle help, Josh Connerly Jr. for the future, but they still really need help off the edge. Lucky for them, there are still some really good players available. I think JT Tuimoloau is a solid option. I don't think he's going to blow you away, but I think he's going to be a solid pickup for you. I think he's going to have starter potential that can be a good rotational player, has flashed in the past, and the Commanders try to upgrade their edge room. Bills at 62, back on the clock. Went with Princely Umanmielen last time up. Hairston in round one. And I don't know that they really need to upgrade linebacker. I want Carson Schwezinger off the board. I think he's getting about too good to be here. But I'm going to go interior defensive line. And I'm going to go with a real space eater. And that is the massive CJ West. I think he's going to be able to eat up blocks. He's a great run defender. And I think playing in the AFC East and playing all these good teams in the AFC North, as the Bills do every year, in the playoffs, if nothing else, you got to be able to stop the run. I think CJ West is going to help free up their pass rushers off the edge and Ed Oliver on the interior. Chiefs at 63 got Josh Simmons. That was a great pickup for them at 32. Doesn't have to start right away. Can still be a big impact player for them in the future. Well, I think the Chiefs need to upgrade their interior defensive line. It is a huge position of need for me. And I'm going to go with Jamar Turner from Texas A&M. He's another defensive lineman that is maybe slightly undersized, maybe not the longest arms in the world, but a high motor guy that can get after the QB. I think the Chiefs could benefit from adding a guy like that into their defensive line. And then the Eagles at 64. They got Jahad Campbell at the back end of round one. It was disappointing, to say the least. I'm a big Jahad Campbell guy, and I'm a massive Eagles hater. And they got Jahad Campbell, one of my favorite players in this draft. They're back on the clock. I don't really know that they have huge needs on the edge. I feel like Jahad Campbell can help that out a little bit. But you also have Azeez Ojulari coming in. You have some good edge rushers that have already been established in Philly. And, I mean, look at Nolan Smith, the year he just had, really breaking out. I don't know that you need to go edge here. And so Schwezinger is going to fall into round 3 for me. I think the Eagles could consider a tight end here. I love the receiving upside of Elijah Arroyo. But I think this might be another interior defensive lineman. I'm going to go with South Carolina's TJ Sanders. And that is my round 2 mock draft. This was a long one, but, I think that it's so tough because there are so many different ways that round 2 and 3 can go. As I've said for a long time now, the difference between 15 and 60 in this draft, or even 75, it's not that significant. So as there were a lot of surprises in round 1 with a guy like Tyleik Williams, I guess, going into round 1. Donovan Jackson at 24. I guess it's not that crazy, right? But, you know, some guys were kind of moving up and down the board that maybe you didn't expect to be first-round picks. Campbell falling to 31. You know, Michael Williams was at number 11. Loveland went top 10, even though these are all good players, right? Round 2 and 3 could be absolutely insane with the order that we see these guys get off the board. So I am really excited to see it. I'll be live for it. I wouldn't be shocked if I missed every single pick in round 2. But there's some really good players still available. There are guys with some potential red flags for injury or character. We'll see if that affects where they end up going. But man, there is some talent here. You are going to find starters. We'll see which direction these teams choose to go. That is it for the video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.